Let's talk about mindset. It is something that is often overlooked, and especially in sales, salespeople have a hard time. With quotas and closing rates above their heads, it can be a pressuring environment. Today's conversation is with Aydin, and although he is not a well-being expert, this conversation goes deep. It's something that everyone needs and deserves to hear. It's super inspiring and insightful and will bring you tactics to take your life in your hands and become a better salesperson. I am Bram, and this is the Sound of Sales. Could you do me a quick favor if you're listening to this? Please hit the follow or subscribe button. It helps more than you think.
Once you see the problem and you understand the problem, you don't need to find the answer. The problem goes away automatically. Ambition of will isn't ambition, it comes out of fear. It's so hard, I think, to build up to that point where there's a lot of psychological safety in the team, and it's so easy to break it down again.
Cool. Aydin, welcome to the Sound of Sales.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we have met like a long time ago when you were at LinkedIn. So you're now almost 2 years at Stripe. So way back, but I'm glad that we can dive into your life right now and get to know the inside out of Aydin.
Jesus, I feel like I should be lying on a couch.
This is your session.
Yeah, this is a safe space.
Yeah. If I would call your parents right now and I ask them, what does your son do for a living? What would they reply to me?
Wow. I would hope they've gotten past the normal reply of saying he does something with computers. That's been the reply for a few years. Granted, I've always been very interested in programming and technical side of things. I would hope though that by now they know I'm in sales. Not that I think they know very well what it entails. I don't think many people do that aren't in sales. But hopefully, that will be the answer.
Something in sales. Now, if we dive in a little bit deeper, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you do every day that gives you the energy?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. So maybe a bit ironically or counterintuitive, but it's not my pipeline or my sales goals or any goals per se. Over the past years, I've tried to cultivate a mental model or a mindset where I don't really have very specific or articulated goals, which is a bit again counterintuitive if you look at how to be successful in this day and age. But I just try to be as much as possible in the moment, although it sounds very cliche. I don't try to live up to something or look at what made me successful last week, which was the end of the quarter in our company. But I really just try to have meaningful conversations with everyone that I meet throughout the day, which is like in this scenario, which is with customers, with colleagues, and that really gives me energy. Being able to have meaningful impact conversations with people and see that spark in their eyes at the end of the conversation. That's what makes me tick.
Awesome. Is that something that in the past you had a different vision on it?
Oh yeah 100%. If I just, and even not that long ago, if I were to look 5 years into the past, I was probably going to be the next CEO of the next big cool startup. I had that that mindset that many of us know that are in sales, and I would say luckily for myself, I deviated from that vision, and I would say I came to realize that those goals, let's say, create more anxiety underlying, or it did at least for me, and I think it does for a lot of people. It creates more anxiety, because you think other people are moving faster towards their goals, or they have articulated their goals in a much more eloquent way, and having them in my experience, it slowed me down, or it stifled me, or all those kinds of things. Whereas if you don't have specific articulated goals, but you just try to do, good work and have good relationships with people, whatever comes, you're already winning, regardless of any goals. And I would say, like, especially having, I think, worked at LinkedIn and have met like very smart and intelligent people that already had these kinds of ideas, and then try and build on top of that and make it my own, that really had a big impact, let's say, in the last 3-4 years. And it does to this day. Like, the stuff that I'm now speaking of is stuff that I think of almost daily.
It's super interesting that you made that mind shift. It's indeed, it's recognizable.
Yeah, it is. Like, when I talk to people and about this stuff, like, everyone keeps nodding and like, it seems so evident, but like, I think we've been conditioned to behave differently from day one.
Yeah, I think it's super hard to you can take this state of, I'm gonna let go of that, but it's something different to really do it, I believe. Yeah. I think it's particularly hard to make that mind shift and think like, whatever comes. And I'm still ambitious, but that doesn't mean I should lose myself in an endless train of thoughts. And
yeah, exactly. And I think what you pointed out now, or the word that you used, is super interesting, like ambition. And I think ambition of will isn't ambition; it comes out of fear. And we think that by having ambitious ambitions, we're playing the game well, but instead it's just a reflex, that is founded by or funded by fear and all those kinds of things, which comes from all these goals that we set ourselves, that we are conditioned with to do, and it's like a vicious circle. And what I found that is, if you try to, now that we're talking about it, and like the normal reflex then is, okay, then how do I self-improve, and how do I not do that, and how do I move away from that conditioning? The irony is, if you try to move away from it, again, you're creating a different goal, you're creating a different set of fears and anxiety. And what I found, let's say, throughout the years, and again, still on a daily basis, is that if you just start understanding where this behavior comes from, where these fears come from, rather than trying to move away from them, automatically they disappear. Because what you see is that to this problem, or any specific problem, it's not a case of trying to find the answer, it's that the problem and the answer are identical. They're one and the same thing. Once you see the problem and you understand the problem, you don't need to find the answer. The problem goes away automatically. And that's been more or less my experience, let's say, in the last year, 2 years, like trying to articulate these things in my head and trying to understand in the first place where this desire for ambition or success comes from. If that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot. It has my train of thought like moving.
Yeah. Maybe we should get that couch either way.
But it's something. Yeah, a lot of people say if you let go of the outcome, you'll thrive even more. But even then, you're already thinking about letting go of that outcome, like you say.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never thought of it like you say it. How did you get to this? Do you read books about it, or is it something that you actively work with?
Yeah. So both, like probably both. Like I think about it a lot and on a daily basis, because in fact I'm trying to, for the past 2 years, I've been trying to write some sort of like book format on it, like these thoughts that I have and how it correlates to my past years in sales and because the thing is, I think with sales, like the sales profession or some other jobs like politics and stuff, I think they amplify and magnify the things we see in the world today and in society that cause internal struggle and conflict. So I think sales and politics are perfectly designed to amplify that. And so what I've been trying to do for the past 2 years is, like, from that experience, like what I've seen in sales and in the bullpen, is like, how does that correlate to all the behaviors that we see in society today that just boil down to the exact same thing. Like whether we have sales goals or ambitions to become the next CEO of a cool startup, or people that have anxiety for, relationship matters or anything else, I think it all comes down to the same essential fears and desire for security and those kinds of things. And so I've been trying to use my sales experience to come to the same essential reasons why people do what we do and why we're conditioned that way. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully, once I, who knows, maybe in a few years publish that book, people, at least one person will have some benefit from it. But yeah, to answer your question, like I've been trying to articulate these ideas and put them into a book and really, get down to the essence of things. And then obviously I try to read books on it as well. Like there's some really, really great thinkers. Like everything that I'm now saying, like I think it's interesting, not to sound arrogant, but these things really interest me. But all these things have been said before and have been thought of before. And if you really go to the old books, and on basic reasoning and not so much psychological books, I think that really, like, there's too much room for interpretation with psychology in general. But I think if you go to the philosophical books, like then it becomes very interesting, because then like the philosophy of mind things, not the, let's say, philosophies on ethics or moral, which are interesting, but really if you go to the philosophy of mind books, then it becomes, I think, really interesting. And specifically if you look at, in my case, to like Eastern philosophy, like those guys, I think, had it figured out a long time ago. That really influences my thinking as well, for sure.
Now it makes sense why you have articles on LinkedIn that says, do we need ambition? And that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, for example, like that article, like it asks the question, do we need ambition? But if you read through it, you don't find a lot of answers. And that's like intentional as well. Like in my thinking and as I try to articulate these things, I don't try to provide answers, because again, that's not what will help people, and that's not what helps me. Like I don't try to find answers. I just try to understand, why it is that we do what we do in the first place. And I think for me personally, that's been the best approach so far, because again, we've been conditioned with the idea of having to self-improve, whereas we, there's this saying that goes like, I think I'm butchering it a bit, but it's along the lines of, we're most certain about the things that we don't really understand. For example, we're most certain about the fact that we need to self-improve and that we need to be successful. And I think if you really look at it, we probably don't even understand, what the self is, what improvement is. I think we don't even have the ability to understand what the difference is between psychological and physical improvement. Like all those things we don't even think about, but we think about it too much in a way that, that we've been conditioned with. And so, yeah, like these things really, get me up in the morning and get my juices flowing, thinking about these things.
Now that you said that, I have to look back at this podcast, and the first episodes were much easier than the ones that came after. Because,
why is that?
Like you say, the things that you don't understand go easier. So in the beginning, you just jump into it and you think, I'm going to have a conversation with someone. And then you see listeners coming in and you think, okay, I need to level up the quality bit, and I need to make sure that I always ask the good questions and that I always have an honest conversation. And at some point, someone said to me, you can see that you're thinking about your next question. And then I needed to figure that out. I needed to fix that. And then at the end, it's just about letting go.
Yeah, exactly. And like, for the record, I don't have that feeling right now. Like, I think you're doing a good job of, actually, just having a listen and trying to have a conversation, which is amazing.
Thanks. It's something you learned it along the way. But the job of sales is super hard. It's like when a new person starts in the job of sales, as in most of the times in SDR, they jump into it, they see quotas, like they are thrown at them from day one in most companies. Like that's so heavy on the mind. Like I don't know anything and have a quota above my head.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, I know how you keep your mental health in check because we just went over that, but is it something, if you see a junior person starting on your team, is it something that you, like, would you go to that person and tell them, like, here's what's up, or this is my 2 cents on how to get through these first weeks, or what would be your go-to?
Yeah, good question. And so, for example, at Stripe, like, and was the same at LinkedIn, but like I try to be an onboarding buddy to as many people as I can, like new starters. And there, like, these questions come up pretty often because, as you pointed out, like, sales is hard. It's hard on multiple levels. Like, you have the technicalities of it, like you have to know how to do it, but then have to know how to deal with the stress and with the constant anxiety and all those kinds of things. And I think, like, when I have these conversations with people as well, like it comes, like, it's on multiple levels. Like, it comes down to small things, for example, like, don't take yourself too seriously. It's just a job. Like, when I started at LinkedIn, for example, that's a few years ago now, I remember the first day, like the onboarding class, I was taking myself very seriously. I made it into LinkedIn. I was going to do this. And then on the first day, like, one of the senior sales managers came in, for an onboarding session, just, from a cultural perspective. The first thing he said was like, look, in 2 years' time, 95% of you guys aren't going to work here anymore. And just remember, at the end of the day, it's just a job. That was it. And I remember, like, there was so much friction inside of me, and I didn't agree with what he said. Now I agree with what he says. Like, and that's, some of the wisdom that I try to convey onto these, new people that join and that are early in the sales job, is like, don't take yourself too seriously. And it's just a job at the end of the day. Like, you can take your job seriously and, you want to do it well. But yeah, there's so much stress that will, come your way. Make sure to have healing time. Make sure that, you aren't your job, that, there's a you outside of the job that, that you can use to heal through. And that's, let's say, one level of, things that you can say to people. And then obviously, like, there's tactics as well, like on the short-term tactics that you can teach people that will help them cope with the stress, for example. And so, very job specific wise, you try to tell people, like, look, this is how the sales cycle works. This is how, how you can be most effective. Because I think the thing that makes good salespeople good is just being consistent in what you do. And once you get people into that rhythm of, look, this is from a tactical perspective what you need to do, you can help them get very consistent in their input and output. I think what then makes salespeople great is if that consistency doesn't come from, a desire to reach those goals, I think that we spoke about earlier. I think if it comes from a state where people are able to manage their energy levels better and detach themselves, their person, from, being in sales, I think that's what makes salespeople great, because then you're much more relaxed and you have much better conversations with people than, trying to fill your own agenda. And instead of then making it about you, you make it all about them, about this, the person in front of you. And, in talking to new starters, these are the types of things that I try to convey, much more than, these are the products, this is how to do a disco, this is how to do a demo, like, more about that mindset, because in the long term, that's hopefully gonna, make them more successful in the marathon, rather than, in the short term, in the next sales sprint.
Yeah, it's something, those skills they can learn along the way, but burning themselves out isn't gonna help them. No. And it happens so much. And like,
even with myself, like don't be mistaken, like it's very easy to get back into that rhythm and into that narrative of, I have to hit my end of the quarter, or, people will think less of me, or I won't be as successful, or I won't get that promotion. Once you have those ambitions that are rooted in fear, you're doing short-term thinking, you're taking shortcuts, you're not making, the best decisions for you or for your customers. And that's, when you're not being set up for success.
Mm-hmm. It's something that another guest on the podcast, Peter Snowhart, I was talking with him a few weeks ago about our own startup and our sales. And it's something that he said to me is, you need to put in the patience. Make a list, a dream list of 100 accounts that you want, but don't go chasing after them like a nuthead.
Yeah.
Because you will need to build that trust relation. You need to detach yourself from that outcome that you need to make a certain quota. Just let go of all that and just build genuine relationships. Because at the end of the day, you either burn yourself and these people will churn again because your heart sold to them, or you build a genuine relationship and these people will buy from you because of who you are and because of the vision of your company, and they will stay. But exactly. When I was at a sales event the other week, I noticed that with a lot of salespeople, it's just about that closing.
ABC.
Always be closing.
And I think, like, to a large extent, like, obviously it also comes down to company culture, and what is expected and what is allowed, to happen. And like, it's so easy to, get into that rhythm or conditioning of, look, even on manager level, like, you also have new managers coming in and they want to prove themselves. And then, that cascades down to the people, in terms of, what kind of team culture that you have. And, that's the easy reflex to do. Like, and obviously, like, 95% of the cases, that's how sales is done. How sales is done, but also, if you zoom out, how the world operates today. We're more, especially, like, I would say sales is also a career path where it's fairly easy to get promoted and to move up the ladder. And so probably that instills, like, short-term thinking as well. Like, what do I need to do the next 12 months to get to point B? And that's probably, what instigates those types of, that type of behavior, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without knowing the underlying stress it's causing. And then there's also the money issue. Well, it's not an issue, but the money driver.
Sometimes. Depending on the quarter.
But that's the thing. What you now say, depending on the quarter, means that there's stress caused by reaching certain quotas. And for others, it's a driver because that will eventually decide their paycheck.
Yeah, that's true. It will decide our paycheck in the short term. Like, I remember when I started at LinkedIn, for example, like I said, I was, the guy that was going to do it, that was going to go to club. I did go to club, but that was for different reasons. What I found that was, for example, in the first half year, in the first year, I was being extremely stressed out. Like, I could see it even physically. Like, I would get these rashes and stuff, like, all just caused by stress. Like, as soon as I was on holiday, it was gone. As soon as I, so that was, and I could just feel it as well, like the daily stress that I would have. And I would think that it was healthy stress. That's another thing. We think, oh, look, this is, what I need to perform, the, grit and all those ideologies. But ironically, once I was, I managed step by step to let that go. I even stopped looking at the leaderboard. I stopped looking at, how much I was closing. And I don't even do it now. Like, sometimes people ask me, where are you at in the quarter, or how are you pacing? I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. I stopped looking at it. And ironically, you'll start performing better. If you then look at the end of the quarter, oh shit, I didn't do all bad, this Q. And I didn't have stress because I wasn't looking at the leaderboard and I wasn't comparing myself to the people behind me or in front of me. And then you just, because you don't have that stress, you make better decisions for the long term, and you have more meaningful conversations. But yeah, it's probably, you know, from a leadership perspective, it's probably hard to manage a sales culture or a sales company and not look at the metrics. So I get it.
That's true.
But, you know, on a rep level, you know, that's probably something worth exploring if you're in sales, if that works for you as well.
Mm-hmm. If we could now let go of everything that you know, or the job that you're in, and we think about creating a results-oriented culture. If you would be managing your team right now, or you would be your boss, what would it entail for you?
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Yeah, what are like the first things that come to mind that you think about, like, I would change that? Remove the leaderboard?
Potentially, yeah. Why not? Like, let's keep it as a surprise at the end of the year to see how we did. Mm-hmm. Well, I think what it then comes down to, like, you know, we talk about stress and anxiety, but probably what you want to cultivate in a team, and especially in sales teams, is psychological safety. Because, you know, there's a lot of, you know, comparison and a lot of, probably not always wanting to help each other in sales. You know, in some sales cultures and in some companies, you know, it's more beneficial to myself if I just focus on myself instead of the others around me. And that's what we see in a lot of sales organizations. So I think if you're able to remove that aspect and create more psychological safety where people just try to help each other, you know, very selflessly, I think you're building a much better company in the long term. 100%. And the difficulty with that is it's so hard, I think, to build up to that point where there's a lot of psychological safety in the team, and it's so easy to break it down again. Like, you only have to have like 1 or 2 events to completely, you know, remove that bedrock. And that's probably the hardest thing. And that can happen by, you know, having the wrong hire, you know, that came in with a different approach, different culture, or different experience. Or it's because, you know, no one's perfect, you know, also not in, you know, not on a sales rep level, but also not in leadership. You know, people make mistakes, make short-term decisions because they're stressed themselves. So I think it's easy to say, let's build psychological culture within the teams and remove the leaderboard, because it's so easy to, you know, make mistakes in that front and you know, reverse what you've built. But if I had to choose one thing, it's probably that.
Yeah, it only needs one person that has one bad day, and that boundary
we've all been
there
again. Yeah, we've all been there. Like, it's very easy to fall into, you know, habits that you've built over the past 20 or 30 years. It's very easy. Yeah. And I say past 20 or 30 years, but obviously the behavior that we see today isn't different, I think, from the behavior that we would have seen 1,000 years ago. Like, underlyingly, it's all comes down from the, you know, from the same desires.
Yeah. What we do notice is that sales is now a little bit more changing into the trust relation and less hard selling, and I think that's a good thing. But that has been around before as well. It just goes in waves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
I think there needs to be happening something in the world, like we had the COVID pandemic, and then people realized, oh, it's not all about computers and hard selling, it's about who we talk to. But in a few months' time, it can all change back again.
Yeah, no, and that's a very good point. Like, you know, we always move in cycles, like on a micro level, but also on a macro level. And yeah, you know, things always change, but they always stay the same, essentially. And I think if you really want that, you know, that change, that, you know, that is very hard to articulate and very hard to put your finger on, like, what is it then? But there's something that we, you know, that we feel that can change and that should change. But I think in order for that to happen, you know, everyone has to change, not just salespeople, because that's just how the world works today. And as we pointed out, sales just amplifies or magnifies those things as well. But Like luckily I've been in teams where on a micro level, like we've managed to cultivate that culture of psychological safety, and then it becomes much more fun, to do sales, because we've all had those weeks and months where it's not fun, where it's very stressful, where we're not being successful and stuff. So luckily, to be very cliche, and I think it's Gandhi who said it, be the change you want to see in the world, like on a microscopic level, or change your piece of the world. So if you can do that, within our teams and our companies, and just try to be a little bit better tomorrow, that's probably the least we can do for now.
Yeah, and you change it for yourself at that moment as well. You make sure that for you and your team, the environment is incredibly awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously, and you'll experience this as well, you're like you're building the startup, and you're growing the team, and obviously you're competing with other products and companies out there that directly or indirectly compete with you, but you're also competing with different sales cultures that maybe in the short term, by taking short-term decisions, will have better results and will grow faster. And like we see this at Stripe as well, we saw it at LinkedIn, and that's a hard thing to compete with. And then it's very hard not to fall into those old habits and short-term ways of thinking, as I'm sure you've experienced yourself.
Yeah, it's yeah. You hit the nail on the head. It's, I think after this episode recording, I will ponder about it, because lately I've been feeling this stress because of ambition, what you just said, and you need to create that safe space, that environment where you can let go of stuff, but you always have that thing above your head. Either it's your quota, or either it's this or that or the other. Or
stakeholders or investors or whatever. Yeah. And probably the question we're thinking about is, what does ambition bring us? And I think ambition in the short term, and short term is relative, obviously. Like for me, short term is the next 20 years. That's short term thinking. Ambition will bring us results in the short term for sure. And having a goal is, or articulating goals is the best way of achieving them, 100%. I think the question we're thinking about is, okay, if we try to understand where ambition comes from, and it's dissolves away, how do we get up in the morning? How do we then build and grow our company? And the way that I thought about it is, well, look, if you are able to let go of ambition in a sense, that it causes stress and slows us down essentially as well, because it does, it stifles long-term thinking. So it slows us down in that aspect. So if you're able to do that and become, let's say, for lack of a better word, limitless, once you drop the ambition and the goals and the labels that you want to live up to, and the ideologies, I would argue you become limitless, and you free up energy to do things in a much better way in the long term. That's probably, if you want to think about it in the shower tomorrow or on the toilet later today, that's the way that I try to frame it for myself and think about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot. It's it's that limitless feeling that we're all after, I believe, that anything is possible, and again, detach yourself from that outcome. You exactly. can have your ambition and see yourself, but I would call it a vision. So you have dreaming and you have envisioning, and dreaming is something like it may come or may not, but envisioning is like it's already a reality. And I've noticed that if you envision, well, it's part of meditation, but if you envision, you generally feel the energy of that moment. And then you become in a different state of mind, I believe. And I think if you combine that one, if you really envision and you let go of what is happening today, like you just go, I think that could also be part of the limitless style.
So basically, if I can paraphrase, what you're then doing is like creating this North Star for yourself. Like this is something to potentially move towards to, but then on a daily level, you just go with the flow, so to speak. And because like I think it's a nice way of thinking about it, because like what I've seen in the past as well. Like, and I've seen myself do it, is like if we set ourselves specific goals and, you know, we do everything in our power to reach that goal, you know, there's no guarantee that we still want to reach that goal once we've reached it. Like, you know, we change as a person, our ideologies change, our, the way we look at the world. And that again, you know, creates that tension field. Like, do we then have to live up to goals? But if you're more or less saying, look, let's just create a potential outside of the future, you know, in different, more thinking in terms of this is the context that I want to move towards or operate in or be in, rather than maybe specific, like very tangible goals. Then, you know, whatever state you reach, you know, is the good state to have reached, rather than specific goals.
Yeah, and it's something I will link the meditation below the episode. But so there's a meditation. I don't remember the name of the person, but it's like 15 minutes, and at the end you envision. And honestly, when you do it and you're all in that flow, at the end you notice, like when last time I was thinking about growing the company and having joyful people around, and what you notice is that you start to smile, you start to feel the emotions of that moment. Right. And if you then come out of that state, you literally feel as if you're still in that moment, and then you're handling in a whole different way. That's a cool way of looking at it. It's crazy what it can do to sit still for 15 minutes. That is true. And I think Steve Jobs said it as well. Like, many of the issues that we see in the world today come from the fact that people can't sit still for 15 or 30 minutes. And that's true. Like, especially and you know, with the phones and everything today. But I think that was true 100 years ago as well. Like, just sit on a chair and sit still for 15 or 30 minutes without you know, doing something. I think that's one of the hardest things to do. And like, we can do it for 5 minutes and 10 minutes even, but like half an hour. That's going to be torture for many people. Nowadays people can't be bored anymore. While being bored is actually your state of mind, allowing your state of mind to do other things. That's a superpower if you can do it. And there's a very good book on this. I think it's from Guy Claxton. I think I read it 10 years ago, and it's called Harebrained Tortoise Mind. So hare as the you know, the rabbit, and it's, you know, there's another book on it as well. I think Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. But essentially, what the book describes is that many people think that relaxation is, you know, having hobbies, is being able to go footballing or reading or whatever. No, relaxation is doing nothing. It's just sitting there, staring in front of you. That's when the mind really gets into a different kind of, you know, wavelength and different kind of approach. And I think it's the exact same thing as you described. It's just the ability of being bored and letting your mind run its course. It's sometimes you have your weekends, and the weekend can be packed of stuff. And then you're like, on Sunday evening, you're like, this was not a weekend. I didn't relax at all. We did a lot of stuff. We did cool stuff, whatever, but we have not given our mind the relaxation it needs. No, true. And then sometimes I literally plan a Saturday afternoon of doing nothing. Exactly. That's what you need to do. Like, I had it a couple of, what are we, 6th of April? So a month ago, like, it was my birthday a month ago, and I took a Wednesday off, like a random Wednesday, and then it turned out to be my birthday. It was the best decision ever. You know, then you really have like, as you say, like, time to properly relax and you know, take a step back. And be bored, like, just be bored. That's one of the you know, superpowers that we probably forgot to cultivate. Yeah, indeed. A few weeks ago, I saw you on a Saturday in the coffee bar,
Could be.
When I was sitting there with my girlfriend and we were trying to like just sit there. I think we sat there for 3 hours or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And just like, let's move out, not our house. Let's just choose a place and just sit there.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That's just
exactly. And at that point, what if you observe it at that point, also what you're doing is you're not trying to hold on to certain things and you're not moving towards certain things. You're just being in the moment. And it's again easy to put on a poster or on a LinkedIn motivational post like be in the moment and live in the now, sure. But if you don't like cultivate, for example, being bored, you'll never be able to achieve that state. That state won't be able to present itself. Like if we say achieve that state, again, we're trying to move towards something.
We're trying to achieve something while causing stress again, and then
exactly. But so every once in a while, we have these moments between living up to something and holding on to something, where we're actually, just peaceful. Probably is a better word.
Yeah, it's amazing when you
rather than trying to be happy or joyful, like just peaceful, like just still. Are the best moments.
Yeah, it's amazing when you can reach that point. I have that a lot in my car. Like at that moment you should be doing something, driving. But when I'm driving at night, like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., I'm like super chill. That's the moment when I reach like that state of just go with this flow, not think about anything, take random turns, see where you end up.
Oh, cool.
It brings me back actually to when I was 15, 16 years old. What I did with a friend was walking straight on. Okay. At some point, we left our houses and we just started walking. And we just walked and walked over fields. One day we had to stop because we couldn't walk any further because we were on the highway.
in China.
No, but like there was like, okay, we can't continue here.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
And at some point, because you're supposed to grow up, you start doing serious stuff. But actually, you need those moments of let your mind do whatever they want.
Yeah. Another quote is, when people tell you to grow up, they mean stop growing. That's maybe a good way of looking at it as well. And, not taking yourself too seriously at times. And I think what you just described, if we tie it back to, being in sales and having conversations with people, like just walk with people, like rather than, sitting across from them, sit next to them, even virtually, and just walk with people, regardless of any target that you have, above your head or goals that you would have for yourself in terms of success or self-improvement. And we should trademark this, just walk with people.
Well, now we've said it, so essentially it's now.
Yeah. But it's a very good way of looking at things. And, again, to come full circle, the stress and the anxiety that prevents, I think, many people from being great at sales and not just good, just comes down to these same fundamental things that we see in life day in, day out. And sales just amplifies these things. And I think if people then are able, like, let's say salespeople, for the sake of argument, are able to sit down, be bored, and just think about, things other than sales, like ironically, they'll get better at sales, probably because they get better at life. And as you pointed out, sales should be all about relationships, which is the essence of life, probably.
Yeah, and people should not scare away from a seller. What happens?
that as well, and that's probably a cultural thing as well. Some people like talking to sales. I've noticed, having worked in different markets, other countries, are very afraid of being sold to. I think Belgian people being one of them. They don't like being sold to in general. No.
Even if you're trying to build conversation, I see you through. I'm not come take it.
No, and it's interesting to see how that differs culturally as well. And like, for example, when I worked at LinkedIn, when I joined, Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg was one region. almost, I would think at that time, 5% of the deals being closed were to Belgian companies, because there was also this, self-fulfilling prophecy or limitation, whatever, that Belgian people were hard to sell to, so people weren't selling to it. Not even the Belgian people within LinkedIn were selling to Belgian companies. And then at one point, we decided to actually pull Belgium apart from that region as a completely different team with its own focus specifically on Belgium. And very quickly, those people started outperforming in terms of overall deal sizes and hitting quota compared to the Dutch team, which was interesting to see. Like, if you just break through that self-fulfilling prophecy and you just take it step by step and you go with the flow, you'll see that a lot of stuff is possible. Like, obviously focus is a big part of it as well. Like, if you focus on something, it's easier to achieve as well. But I found that luckily, you can also sell to Belgian people, but it does take a different approach. And I think it's much more of a what we try to do in sales today is being consultative and consultative selling and value-based selling. Like, I think if we look at the Belgian market, that's my experience at least. They're built for that. Like, this is this is what people want to do. Like, building long-term relationships, and really having those conversations. Sometimes too many conversations, but about the same thing. But maybe we're ahead of the curve, and I say we, being in Belgium. Maybe we've always been ahead of the curve that we want consultative selling rather than being sold a vacuum cleaner. But
that's true.
Yeah. Has that been because I know you guys have like customers all over the world. Like, has that been your experience as well? Like, do you see those differences in the way that you sell?
The thing is that we try not to sell.
Right. Okay.
So we're building a typical SaaS model where we want people to just get started on your own. But in fact, I've noticed that if you put in the time to sit next to the person, quite literally, yesterday I was sitting next to a customer, thinking about their flow, thinking about how to get less admin work and busy. I noticed that that's the way you create that relationship. And it's no more about technology at that moment. No. It's really about helping each other. So I truly believe in that model. So I'm trying to elevate it. But I've noticed in other parts of the world, it's getting that way as well.
And probably parts of the world, but potentially also like from a company culture perspective. Like, I've seen differences. Like, for example, when I worked in Belgium, like, I remember very, very vividly, like, there was this insurance client that I worked for, and like, even then, like, I really wanted to have like this collaborative way of selling and being consultative. And I remember when I came into the meeting room in Brussels, like, there was one person sitting on one side of the table, from the customer side, and I sat next to them. And then more people came in from the customer side, and they all automatically they went and sat across from us, on the other side of the table. And then what happened? That person that I was sitting next to also switched sides to the other side of the table. I remember this so vividly that I was like, really? Like, really, is this how you want to, build a company culture? Like, I was a bit surprised back then, but it's something that stuck with me. And it's probably like the point that I was trying to make. It's probably also different for different types of companies or industries that have different cultures, probably. And maybe like old insurance companies is probably also a breed of its own.
That might be true as well. It's something that I often point out is that let's just sit next to each other, because then we can share my screen and it's easier, and I'm going to write stuff down and then we can elaborate on it. Pointing it out, it triggers it triggers them to be uncomfortable sometimes, like okay. But at the end of the meeting, they're like super happy because you can cover much more than sitting across and playing like it's on
it's true. Like, it's true physically, and I think it's true on a psychological level. Like, if you get into a sales conversation, for lack of a better word, and you really, just try to sit next to them as a colleague, or, as just another human being trying to do, your job. And generally,
it's instant trust.
Yeah, exactly. It's trust in one another. It's trust in yourself. That you're not going to try to sell them something, I would say, because it's so easy to fall into that, that cadence as well. But if you're just able to have a conversation, you relax into it. You just really genuinely listen to, what the underlying problems are and what the root causes of the problems are, and you're willing to also say, look, what I offer isn't what you need. Having the balls to do that as well, I think what sets great salespeople apart from good salespeople.
Yeah, and you create respect in that way, and they will always remind of you. And when they need it, they're gonna come back.
Yeah, exactly. I
just thinking about something.
I just thought of something when I was at LinkedIn, like specifically when I started out and I worked on the Belgian market, like I would usually start my initial conversation by saying, look, this is just a conversation. I'm not going to try to sell you anything today. Like sometimes you had to be that, specific, just to put, to get their guard down. And I remember one case where this lady was really offended, and she was like, what? No, I want to buy something today. like her expectation was, like, maybe she had done her research. Her expectation was that I was going to be the guy that actually was able to give her the tool that she wanted or needed. So I had completely misread the room, let's say. And like, she was really offended that I said, I'm not going to sell you anything today. She probably thought that I was being arrogant. And she ended up buying something that day, like. So it's funny, like sometimes it's the other way around.
Okay, let me take the order form out and just get this done.
Look, we'll just change gears and we'll make that happen for sure.
That's awesome.
Like that doesn't happen often though. That they really want to buy something. But sometimes there's these quick wins as well. And that's another thing, like to maybe get back to the tactics of sales, like and I did a session on this at Stripe a couple of weeks ago as well to new starters, is that it's in sales, like from a tactical perspective, it's really important to prioritize your accounts, but also the deals that you're working on in pipeline. And for example, quick wins is one of them, where that the upside or the win is small, but also the effort is small, and those are the ones you just want to get through the system. But I think where a lot of people struggle, especially coming into sales, is they're not able to recognize what a quick win is, what a big bet is, what a home run is, and what fallbacks are. And obviously they have different upsides, but also different levels of effort that you need to put into them. And once you're able to recognize that, you're also able to better manage your time, energy, and you much more easily move away from a state of strained performance and automatically end up in a state of high performance, where people confuse the two. They think because I'm working hard and I'm putting my head down and I'm putting in the work, I'm doing a good sales job. No, you're in strained performance. You're making short-term decisions. You want to be in high performance. And in order to do that, you need to prioritize your time and recognize where to put your effort in.
We should do another take on that one.
Yeah.
Because I think it's there's a lot in the back end in order to come into that mode. I believe.
Absolutely. And just to cultivate being in that mode more often, because I think we move between modes so often, but it's a matter of cultivating a mindset that allows you to be in one mode more and be more successful. But for sure, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Indeed. And I received a book from someone, again from Peter. He shipped me a book. It's called Flow.
Okay.
And it's really about finding that flow for yourself. So getting into the performance mode or strain mode, like you need to be able to recognize your own self and your stress signals and all those things, and realize what brings me into flow. Which is that high performance.
Exactly.
Mode.
And I think if you read a lot of books by top athletes and sports people, I think they're much better at recognizing those signals that their body gives. Like, for example, for me, it was rashes, caused by stress. But like one of my colleagues at LinkedIn, Neil van der Kamer, he did judo on a like top level, and like what made him the best sales at LinkedIn arguably was the fact that he was able to manage his body and his energy levels and his mind much better, because he knew when he was pushing the limits, much more so than people that aren't trained in that fashion. So it's it's very true what you're saying.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of top athletes do as well, as the envisioning part that I explained earlier. They already see the victory, and they get into that mindset of winning. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, which is the best way, to achieve that goal, 100%. Yeah.
As a last question to wrap things up.
All right. Time flies.
Time flies indeed. If I could give you a billboard at the side of the road, a large billboard, what would you put on it?
Jesus. I only have 1 minute to think about it.
You can think about it.
Yeah. It would, for different reasons, probably be slow down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, like obviously it's better to slow down when you're on the road, but I think, I think we've been conditioned to, move fast and break things. Like, I think that was the mantra at Stripe, not at Stripe, at Facebook as well, like move fast and break things. And I think that's a very good reflection of society, and has been, the reflection of society for the past, few hundred years probably, is move fast and move faster and do more and do better. And I think if you observe what is happening, it's probably not helping the situation. And I think if you're able to slow down, in the way that we do business, in the way that we build relationships, in the way that we, allow time to be bored and look at ourselves, hopefully in time, we'll have less internal struggle, and because we are, the reflection of society, we'll have less struggle within society.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome, Aydin. Thank you for joining me on The Sound of Sales. It was super insightful.
Yeah, I liked it. I very much enjoyed your thoughts, for sure.